She kept saying she doesn't eat babies, but her plate told a completely different story. 8:34 p.m. She screamed at him to shut up. At a dinner party. In front of other people. And then she went right back to eating her chicken like nothing happened. That is the moment this whole story clicked into place for me, and I need you to hear every single detail of how we got there. So it starts simply enough. Our narrator and his partner are out to dinner with an older family friend, a 69-year-old woman with some very specific opinions about food and absolutely no hesitation about sharing them. The kind of woman who has lived long enough to feel completely entitled to her worldview and who has probably never been seriously challenged on it. They order veal. She doesn't. Fine. Completely fine. Nobody is asking her to eat anything she doesn't want to eat, and nobody at that table would have said a single word about it if she had simply ordered something else and moved on with her evening. But instead of just quietly scanning the menu and finding something that suited her preferences, like a normal person sitting at a normal dinner, she makes a declaration. She announces, loud enough for the entire table to hear, that she does not eat veal because she does not eat babies. There is a certain performance to it, a practiced quality, as if this is a line she has delivered before and enjoys delivering. She sets it down on the table like a centerpiece. Then the food arrives. Then she says it again. Now I need you to sit with that for a second. The food is already on the table. Everyone has their plates in front of them, everyone has picked up their cutlery, the conversation has moved on in the natural way that dinner conversation does when people are hungry and the meal has finally arrived. The moment has passed. And she announces her moral stance a second time, unprompted, as though she was worried someone at the table had spent the last 4 minutes forgetting her feelings about veal. There is something almost compulsive about it, like the statement does not feel complete until it has been repeated, until it has truly landed. And then she picks up her fork and starts eating her chicken. Oh, the chicken. We will get back to the chicken. Months pass. She comes to visit again, slipping back into their lives the way recurring characters do, comfortable and familiar and entirely unchanged. And even though there is no veal on the table this time, even though nobody has ordered lamb, even though the topic of young animals being slaughtered for food has not come up in any form or any conversation, she announces it again. She does not eat babies. Just putting that out there. Completely unprompted, dropped into the room like she had been holding on to it the whole drive over. Our narrator sits there trying to reconstruct what even triggered it this time and genuinely cannot recall a single thing that would have opened that door, which tells you everything you need to know about how random and reflexive this declaration has become. It is not a response anymore. It is a habit. It is armor she puts on at the table without even checking whether there is anything to defend against. This is the part where our narrator does something genuinely interesting, something that separates him from everyone else in her life who has presumably just nodded politely and kept eating. Instead of being quietly annoyed and letting it dissolve into the general noise of the evening, he gets curious. He goes home and does actual research. He looks into the ages at which different animals are slaughtered for meat, digging into the numbers with the kind of specific focus that only comes from a question that has genuinely lodged itself in your brain. He examines the data in absolute terms, meaning raw weeks of life, and also as a proportion of each animal's natural lifespan, meaning how much of a full life the animal has actually lived before it ends up on someone's plate. And what he finds is not a minor technical footnote buried in agricultural literature. It is a direct, clear, unavoidable contradiction of the entire moral premise she has been announcing at dinner tables. Chickens are killed younger than calves and lambs. Not slightly younger. Meaningfully younger, both in terms of raw age and in terms of how much of their natural life they have experienced. The animal she eats every single week, the one sitting on her plate at that very dinner while she makes her declaration, dies younger by almost any standard you choose to apply than the animal she is loudly and publicly refusing to touch. He has the receipts. He has done the work. He has the numbers. And then fate, with a certain theatrical generosity, delivers him the perfect moment. A gathering. Multiple people around the table. A wedding menu being discussed, the kind of conversation where food choices are already front and center, where the whole point is to talk about what everyone will and will not eat. And she does it. She opens her mouth and she says the words. Again. I do not eat babies. Right there in front of everyone, as confident and settled as if she were announcing the weather. And our narrator, probably very calmly and very simply, the way you speak when you have been waiting for a moment and you finally have it, says, "But you eat chicken." Her response is, "So?" It is a remarkable word choice in that moment. So. As if the connection he is drawing is so obvious it barely deserves her attention, or alternatively so absurd it is not worth engaging with. Either way, she is not worried. She is comfortable. And he explains. Chickens are only around 6 weeks old when they are slaughtered for meat. And she says they are fully grown. And this is where it gets genuinely interesting, because she is not entirely wrong in the narrowest possible sense, which is probably why she believes it so completely. Those chickens do look like full-sized adult birds. Their bodies have filled out, their feathers have come in, they move around like chickens move around. But he explains that this is only because of how they are bred and fed, that their bodies are the product of decades of industrial optimization designed to push them to market weight as fast as biologically possible, that a 6-week-old broiler chicken is not remotely the same creature as a 6-week-old wild bird, and that by any honest biological or proportional standard, these are very young animals dying very early lives. The appearance of maturity is manufactured. It is not the same as actual maturity. And the comparison she has been drawing, the one where veal is a baby and chicken is not, simply does not hold up when you look at the actual numbers. And that is when she loses it completely. She does not engage with the information in any way. She does not say he is wrong and then walk through why she believes that. She does not present a counterargument, cite a different source, or suggest that maybe the comparison is more complicated than he is making it sound. She does not take a breath and say, "Well, I had not thought about it that way, let me consider that." She shouts. She tells him she does not want to hear it. She tells him to shut up. In front of other people, at a table full of witnesses, because he handed her a fact she had no way to refute and her only available response was volume. I am sorry, but I absolutely cannot move on from that response. She screamed shut up at someone for telling her a biological fact about the animal she was currently eating. The fork was probably still in her hand. Our narrator stops talking to avoid making the scene any worse than it already is. And I respect that deeply. I genuinely do. Because most people in that moment, with that much adrenaline and that much justified confidence in their position, myself very much included, would have been almost physically unable to stop. The temptation to say, "I am just sharing what the research shows," or, "Would you like me to find you the source right now," would have been enormous. He resists it. He closes his mouth. He lets her have the moment, lets her sit in the silence she has just created, and he takes the high road with what I can only imagine was a considerable amount of internal effort. But here is the thing. He cannot let it go entirely. And I do not think he should have to. Because this is not really about chicken or veal or the precise agricultural definition of a baby animal. This is about someone who has built a meaningful piece of her identity around a moral claim, who has repeated that claim loudly and publicly across multiple social occasions over many months, and who responds to a direct factual challenge to that claim not with curiosity, not with humility, not even with a polite request to change the subject, but with rage and with volume. She does not want to examine her beliefs. She wants to announce them and have everyone at the table nod along and let her feel good about herself. That is what the declaration has always been about. Not the veal. The feeling. And our narrator is the one person in her life who actually looked at the information and thought, "Wait a minute. Let me check that." Months go by and she visits again. And she says it. Again. The declaration, unchanged, unexamined, delivered with the same confidence as always, as if the previous conversation never happened, as if he never said a word. At this point our narrator describes himself as seething inside but keeping his mouth shut, holding the frustration behind a calm expression while the familiar words land on the table yet again. That level of sustained self-control deserves genuine recognition because most people would have cracked long before this moment, and I would have been writing a very different and much more dramatic Reddit post. So here is what he wants to do. The next time she visits, the next time she reaches into her repertoire and produces the declaration, he wants to respond with a gentle smile and zero hostility. Something calm and factual and polite, something that simply puts the information back on the table and lets everyone at that dinner see it clearly. Not an attack. Not a gotcha. Just the data, delivered quietly, and then silence while she decides what to do with it. Now, would he be the problem for doing that? Let me be clear about where I stand on this. He would absolutely not be wrong. She has made this declaration repeatedly, loudly, in shared group settings, at other people's dinner tables, at wedding menu discussions, in front of multiple guests on multiple occasions. She has not kept this opinion quietly to herself and allowed others to enjoy their meals in peace. She has inserted it into shared social spaces over and over again with the very clear implication that she is morally superior to the people around her who are eating differently. That is not a private belief she is protecting. That is a public moral claim she is making out loud in front of an audience, and public moral claims made repeatedly in front of other people are absolutely open to public scrutiny. That is how this works. The thing that stays with me is the shutting down. When she told him to be quiet, she was not protecting herself from cruelty or unkindness. She was not shielding herself from something harmful or distressing in any personal sense. She was protecting a belief from evidence. She was demanding that the information stop existing in her presence. There is a very significant difference between saying, "I find this upsetting, can we please talk about something else," which is a reasonable and human request, and screaming "shut up" at someone for providing verifiable biological information about a meal you are currently consuming. One is a boundary. One is a refusal to occupy the same reality as the facts. And the fact that she returned in subsequent visits and made the same declaration again, without ever acknowledging what he had told her, without ever adjusting the claim even slightly, tells me that somewhere in the quieter parts of her mind she already knows the foundation of her stance is shakier than she would ever admit out loud. Our narrator is not trying to force her to eat veal. He has never put anything on her plate she did not choose herself. He is not trying to shame her in front of company or humiliate her or take something away from her. He is responding to a repeated, unsolicited, public moral performance with the only appropriate currency there is, which is accurate information delivered calmly and honestly. If she wants to stop eating chicken too after hearing this, that is a completely valid response and arguably the intellectually consistent one. If she wants to expand her framework and reconsider what she counts as a baby animal in light of new data, also completely valid and honestly admirable. But if she wants to keep making the announcement and keep eating the chicken and keep expecting everyone around her to absorb the declaration without comment, she does not get to also demand that no one point out the contradiction sitting right there on her plate. You cannot hold the microphone and then declare the microphone off limits for everyone else in the room. He is not the problem here. Not even close. 9 weeks pregnant, on my knees gagging, and he asked me how I would cope in public. She was 9 weeks pregnant, already on her knees fighting off waves of nausea, changing sheets from a blowout diaper, when the baby had another one. And her partner was on the couch. Scrolling. She walked over and asked for help. And what she got back was a question about how she planned to manage in public. Let me tell you everything about this one, because there is a lot here that deserves to be unpacked slowly. Our narrator is 9 weeks into her third pregnancy. She tells us up front that this one has been different from the other two. The morning sickness is significantly worse. The nausea is constant and intense, the kind that does not politely retreat after breakfast but follows her through every hour of the day like a shadow she cannot shake. She describes it as something that has quietly reshaped her entire daily life, the way she moves through rooms, the foods she cannot look at anymore, the way certain smells stop her cold before she even registers what they are. She is not someone who asks for help easily. Her partner actually nags her about this, tells her she should ask for more help, that she is too independent, that she does not lean on people enough. So she has heard, repeatedly, from this same person, that asking for help is something she should do more of. That detail matters enormously. She has been coached, by him, to be more vulnerable. She has been told that her self-sufficiency is something to soften. And she has been listening. She is changing her baby's sheets after a blowout diaper. If you have ever dealt with a blowout, you already understand the particular chaos of that moment. It is not a simple task. It requires focus and steadiness and a stomach that is cooperating, none of which she currently has in full supply. The smell hits differently when you are pregnant. Scents that were once merely unpleasant become something close to unbearable, and her body is already primed and hair-triggered toward nausea at even the mildest provocation. The baby has another one while she is mid-change, which resets the entire process and doubles the mess and the smell and the duration of the ordeal. The gag reflex that follows is louder than she would have liked, because pregnancy nausea is not something you can politely muffle on command. It does not respond to willpower or embarrassment or the presence of an audience. She gathers the supplies. She steadies herself. She walks to where her partner is sitting, still and unbothered on the couch, phone in hand, the image of someone who has not noticed or decided not to. She says, calmly and simply, that she needs some help with this diaper change because it is already a lot for her. And he asks her how she plans to handle it in public. I need to just sit here for a moment because that response is doing a lot of work. Think about what that sentence is actually communicating. It is not, of course, let me help you. It is not, are you okay? It is not even a straightforward no. It is a challenge disguised as a practical question. It is saying, your struggle right now is a personal failure of preparedness, not a genuine moment of need. It is framing her request for help as a sign of weakness or incompetence rather than as the completely reasonable response to a difficult physical situation that it clearly is. She is 9 weeks pregnant and gagging over a diarrhea diaper after a full sheet blowout. That is not a personal failing. That is just a Tuesday. Her response to him is perfect, by the way. She says, I have help at the moment, so I am asking for it. That is a composed and logical answer to an unkind question, and she should be proud of it. There is something quietly devastating about how measured that reply is. She is nauseated and kneeling and managing more than any one person should have to manage in that moment, and she still found the clarity to respond with logic instead of frustration. That kind of composure under pressure does not happen by accident. It happens because she has had practice. But he does not get up. The diaper does not get changed. So she goes and does it herself. While her toddler runs around holding a puke bowl and some water to help her avoid actually vomiting, which is something a small child has apparently learned to do because this pregnancy has been hard enough and long enough that the toddler has adapted. Sit with that image for a moment. A toddler, small enough to still be in diapers herself, has already internalized her mother's struggle well enough to have a role in managing it. She knows where the bowl lives. She knows to bring water. She has made herself useful in a situation that no child should have to understand yet. That is not a cute family quirk. That is a small person responding to a need that a grown adult in the same house has decided not to fill. She handles the diaper. She handles the nausea. She handles everything, alone, while her partner sits on the couch and observes. And then he calls it dramatic. After everything is done, she tells her partner directly that she does not feel supported during this first trimester. She says it clearly and without cruelty, laying it out as plainly as she can. She says it feels like everything she is going through is being treated as fake or disingenuous, like her symptoms are performances rather than physical realities she has no control over. She is not yelling. She is not throwing things. She is doing the hard and vulnerable work of naming something painful inside a relationship she is trying to make work. And instead of reflecting on that, instead of acknowledging the moment on the couch or the question he asked or the fact that she ended up doing it all by herself anyway, he gets upset. He is the one who becomes upset. That detail right there is what transforms this from a bad moment into a pattern. Because look at the full picture. He is someone who tells her she should ask for help more. But when she asks for help, she gets attitude. He sits on the couch and does not move when she comes to him with a genuine need. He responds to her request by questioning her ability to function independently rather than simply helping. He watches her struggle alone. He describes her visible nausea as dramatic. And when she names how this is making her feel, he becomes the one who is upset. Every single one of those things is a problem on its own. Together they form something that is really worth looking at carefully. Let me say what I think is actually happening here. Her feelings are consistently being treated as inconvenient. Her physical symptoms are being framed as performances. Her requests for help are met with challenges instead of support. And when she tries to name this dynamic, the conversation shifts to his emotional response rather than her experience. That is an exhausting way to exist inside a relationship, especially during a pregnancy that she has already told us is harder than the previous two. The exhaustion is not just physical, though it is certainly that. It is the specific and compounding exhaustion of having to justify your own experience to someone who has promised to be on your side. Of having to prove that what you are feeling is real before it will be taken seriously. That kind of emotional labor sits in the body the same way grief does. Heavy and constant and invisible to everyone around you. She did not ask him to carry the baby. She did not ask him to feel the nausea for her. She asked him to change one diaper. She is not the problem in this story. Let me be completely direct about that. She did everything right. She asked for help when she needed it. She used clear and honest language. She did not guilt or manipulate. She simply said she was struggling and she needed support. And then when that support did not come, she handled it anyway, because that is apparently what she has learned to do. And then she told the truth about how she feels, which is the most mature and courageous thing a person can do inside a relationship that is not giving them what they need. His question, "How are you going to do this in public?" is the kind of thing that sounds like concern but is actually dismissal. It reframes her current struggle as a future inadequacy. It avoids the immediate moment entirely by projecting it into a hypothetical. And it puts the burden back on her without him having to do a single thing. That is a remarkably effective way to say no without technically saying no, and I think she knew exactly what it felt like even if she could not articulate it in that moment. She deserves a partner who gets up off the couch. She deserves someone who, when she walks over visibly struggling and says she needs help, puts the phone down and helps. Not because he is obligated to by some external rule, but because he loves her and she is carrying their child and she is having a hard time. That should be enough. That should always be enough. She is not dramatic. She is not disingenuous. She is not manufacturing symptoms for attention. She is a pregnant person doing more than she should have to do alone, and she was brave enough to ask for help and honest enough to name what it felt like when that help did not come. She deserves credit for both of those things. Drop a comment and tell me which story hit harder for you, because I genuinely cannot decide. And if you are enjoying the channel, a like and a subscribe means more than you know.